Hello, welcome back to the Arturia DX-7 tutorial series. In the last episode, we had a look at envelopes and level scaling from a basic concept just within the overview page. And you can see here we are back at our default preset with a nice simple envelope shape on operator 1 again. If I click the envelopes tab, this shape here looks exactly the same as the overview window. In fact, it is an exact representation of the level envelope for each of the operators. So we have 6 operators, each with their own envelope curve, and on the envelopes tab we've got that information exactly represented. But can you see, as I'm kind of scrolling over these or moving my mouse over the operators, it's kind of flashing at you. What it's actually doing is giving you a representation of what each of the different operator curves looks like. If I head back over to the overview tab and just make a change to operator 2. Now back on the envelopes page, here's operator 1, here's operator 2, and as I hover over it, I get a superimposition of that envelope that I just drew. If I select operator 2, just by clicking just below the name is the best place, I think, to select each one of these operators, then it shows me that envelope, and we've got a color coding scheme as well that works for us. Now when I hover over operator 1, I get to see it superimposed over operator 2. Now we saw in the last episode how you modulate the level of a carrier, you're changing the volume, nice and simple. You modulate the level of a modulator, and you're changing the tone of the underlying carrier, and it kind of blows your mind. We're going to investigate that concept a little bit more today. So I just randomly drew operator 2's envelope like this. Let's see what that sounds like. Of course, I've not increased the level, have I? There we go. And you can see all of these little kind of satellites flying around. You get to see in real time all the different envelope journeys that are traveling. You can kind of see them superimposed over each other. Now we're only interested in operators 1 and 2. That's probably the best master view to get an idea of what these two things are doing. So we've got a nice stable volume, but under the hood, this tonal change that's being made. Now I think the coolest thing about the envelope page is the loop function. So let's just dive in and have a look at that first, because this is where things really start happening. We've got a start and end value just to the right of the loop button, and these are all linked together. And if I change the value of the end node, you can see a graphical representation of the zone around which the loop is going to happen. So if I choose 3, 4, 5, nodes 3 to 5, I'm going to loop around this section here. See what that sounds like. So now once I've held a key down long enough to reach node number 4, this envelope immediately starts looping around. It doesn't care about anything else that's going on. Every one of these operators has a completely independent envelope. Operator 2 is just worrying about itself. And this is why we deal in operators, because they're like mini synths in their own right. Remember right at the beginning of the tutorial series, we talked about an operator being a bundle of stuff, and the oscillator is just one thing in this bundle. The envelope is a really important part of it as well. So we've got all of these little mini synths doing their own thing, and then how we plug them together ultimately goes on to define the sound of the overall synthesizer. So now we've got this weird kind of thing going on. And as you can see, you really very quickly get to some very interesting sonic templates. That's very cool. Obviously we can change that node range whenever we want, create some extra ones, go out here. We can also throw all of that away and get back to a default template. So we've got loads of templates up above. There are little arrows here that are really difficult to see, but we can scroll through these various templates, choose one, and it just gives you a new starting point from which you can then go on to build whatever envelope you want. Don't forget, we can always do exactly the same for operator 1. So this is volume and this is tone. Now, the speed at which these envelopes operate can also be adjusted. We've got a rate multiplier up here, currently set to 1. If I increase that rate, then envelope 2 is going to cycle much faster than envelope 1. Again, try to treat them all completely distinct. We're just dealing with the rate multiplier for operator 2 here. Operator 1 is still set to 1. Oh, turn my loop back on. So 10 is the fastest. And you can go below 0, you can go below 1. 0.1 is the slowest rate multiplier, which makes it 10 times slower than standard. And now it's absolutely crawling along. In addition to a rate multiplier, you can also affect the rate of the envelope across the keyboard. And that's the keyboard rate scaling option. I'm sorry about the colour scheme again, but it's here. So at 0, it's default, and every key has the same envelope speed. As soon as I start incrementing this value, it starts scaling higher notes to play faster. It's based on C-2 right down at the bottom of the octave range. So all of the keys on my keyboard are now going to play different speed envelopes for operator 2. So there's a low key, a high key, much faster. I increase the rate scaling all the way up to 7, which is the maximum. See, the lowest key that I've got on my keyboard happens to be, I don't know, whatever it is, C1. It's still faster than it was at rate scale 3, but this high key is like super fast. We can override all of our timing concerns and send us into sync mode, and then we lock to the host tempo, at which point keyboard rate scaling is grayed out and inaccessible. You can't change the keyboard rate when you're in sync mode. You do still have a rate multiplier, but now you can see it's locked in fractions of the host BPM. We can decide how big we want our sync grid to be, and we can also change the beat resolution with this box down here. And we've got this thing at the top left hand corner that currently says MSEG, and that stands for multi-stage envelope generator. That's the thing that we've been dealing with up until now. 16 nodes, all of this modern powerful flexibility, that's a multi-stage envelope generator. We can go back old school and choose the DX7s. It's actually an ADDSR kind of thing. You've got a fixed number of nodes, and you can see as I'm moving the release, the start point kind of changes to compensate. But basically, we have an attack, and then we have a 2-stage, treat it like a decay phase really, pretty much doing that job. Here's our sustain node, and then off to the release. It might be simple, but simple is fine. You know, that's a pretty flexible, powerful envelope. And then we have a delayed ADSR. So this is a standard ADSR envelope with our attack, decay, sustain, and release, just as you would see, you know, on most envelopes. But we've also got the ability to delay the beginning of the envelope, and that can be really useful, particularly for modulators, where you want some natural tone to come through, wait an amount of time, and then the modulator kicks in and starts colouring the tone. Of course, I've made it a bit long here. And then here comes the tone. The last thing for us to have a look at today are these options below the operators. Now, the only one we're actually going to discuss today is the top one, because we'll deal with the two modulation envelopes when we deal with the modulations page. That's for another day. But we can deal with the pitch curve. So I'll throw all of that silliness away and get back to our nice default sound. There's my sine wave. And now if I edit the pitch curve, guess what's going to happen? If I give myself some release on my amplitude envelope and head back to the pitch envelope, pretty straightforward. Now these three envelopes below are global and you get one for the whole suite, which is why they're kind of offset from the standard operators. It doesn't matter which operator I'm dealing with, the pitch curve is still the same. So let's put a modulator envelope in, increase the level of operator 2, and can you hear everything is scaling? This is the reason why I said that ratio is a far more common way to work with FM synthesizers, because the ratio of modulators to carriers is pretty fundamental. It's pretty important to keep something that's kind of usable and musical. The moment we break that ratio relationship, which you absolutely can do, it becomes atonal very quickly. And so all the envelopes are being scaled at the same rate, keeping all the ratios consistent. Another thing to point out about the pitch curve is that it doesn't care about looping. So we can loop to our heart's content with all of these modulators and they will do their thing. But that pitch note behind the scenes is stuck on its own sustain node. And then when we let go, it has its own release phase. We also have bipolar, which means that we can go below the played note, or unipolar, where all of the values are above the played notes. If I press a C2, then none of this pitch variance is going to be below C2. That's the advanced envelopes page dealt with. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do hit the like button, and I'll see you for the next episode. Thanks very much for watching.